Hi, I'm Paige Carter, Technical Assistance Associate for VCU ACE. I'd like to welcome you to Teachers as Instructional Leaders, Building Exemplary Teacher Paraprofessional Teams. Today, the things we're going to talk about are really important for classroom teams. We're going to talk about teachers and what it means to be an instructional leader in the classroom. We're going to talk about building strong instructional teams and forging those relationships that really make the difference for student learning. We're going to talk about all the reasons why we do what we do every day. I look forward to all the things we're going to learn together. So the first thing we're going to talk about is teachers as instructional leaders and exactly what that means. It's really a management role, and I was a teacher for many years in the classroom, and I don't remember anyone ever teaching me how to manage other adults. And so much of our job is dependent on all the things that other people do on our team. So some of the things that we have to do in this management role are organizing staff schedules, organizing student schedules, planning for instruction, and that's not just for the instruction that we're going to do as teachers, but the instruction that our paraprofessionals are going to do as well. And we also have to manage all the IEP accommodations, both in our classroom and out in general education. We have to encourage all the team members. And when you think about who the team members are who are supporting your team, that's a vast number of people. It's paraprofessionals, it's other general education and special education teachers, it might be administrators, counselors, related service people. All of those people on the student's team are important and need your encouragement. We also talk about organizing meetings a lot, not just IEP meetings, but meetings for the team, maybe meetings with the student, or even parent conferences. We also do a lot of talking about data, and not just taking data, but using data for instruction, organizing that, and helping all of our team members to take and use the data in the same way so that it will be helpful to build IEP goals and know where we go next. It's also important that teachers train new staff. So we're not only managing, but we're also training. And that is another task that teachers were not necessarily prepared for in our preparation programs. So having a system for bringing somebody on in your classroom so that they can help learn your routines and the systems that you have is really important. We're also going to provide feedback and support to all our staff. So that means we have to check in quite regularly. And we also have to provide day-to-day supervision of all the folks that are working with our students, as well as the students in our classrooms. So what we definitely know, and what we've touched on a little bit already, is that teacher preparation programs and in-service trainings do not generally include strategies for effectively working with paraprofessionals or other team members. All of those management tasks that we just talked about are not part of our curriculum. So it really is a struggle for teachers to be able to learn those management skills. So if you're feeling a little bit of that stress, you're not alone. And it is absolutely one of the most challenging parts of our job, but it's not insurmountable. It's something that we can learn to do if we're systematic, and that is exactly the main thing that we're going to talk about today. So as you begin to lead, you may have some questions, and here are the main questions. What do I do with my paraprofessionals? I remember my first year teaching, I walked into a classroom and the materials were there and the furniture was there, and there were also two adults in the room looking at me for leadership. They wanted me to tell them exactly what I needed them to do when I had no idea what I was going to do myself. So we sat down and we really talked about having a system for how we were going to communicate as we figured it out, and that made a big difference. But I remember being terrified at the thought of managing two other adults. So as you think about your paraprofessionals, really what you have to ask is, how can he or she help me reach the student's goals? What is it that we can do together as a team to promote student learning? So here's where we go about finding the answers to those questions. We simply have to ask. So there are mentors or other teachers in the school who seem to have a really great relationship with their paraprofessionals. Those are the ones that you should ask. They have years and have been seasoned and know a lot of strategies and tips that will help you. Also ask your administrators. Maybe they have systems already in place for communicating with paraprofessionals, or just some little tips that they've learned along the way. You also have specialists that can support you, and that might be the speech therapist, an autism specialist, or maybe even a team leader in the school, maybe a grade level chairperson that might have some tips on how you can build those relationships and really get systems going in your classroom. But most importantly, I think it's important to ask your paraprofessionals, how do you learn best? How do you communicate best? What would be the best way for us to sit down and work this out? A lot of times just sitting across the table with your classroom staff and discussing those kinds of questions can really build a lot of trust, and it can also gain a lot of information for what it is that we're going to do as a team to make our students feel comfortable and for us to feel comfortable in the classroom as well. Now I'd like for us to talk about paraprofessionals. There are more than 400,000 paraprofessionals working in classrooms across the United States. They are supporting students with disabilities across the continuum of services in general education as well as special education classrooms. With that many paraprofessionals working across the United States, we know that they are crucial for the implementation of a free and appropriate public education. It's not only instruction, but making sure those accommodations and modifications that are in IEPs are carried out, as well as supporting teachers in their roles. Paraprofessionals are a critical part of what we do. Over the years, the role of the paraprofessional has changed. Gone are the days of cutting and laminating and making copies and those clerical tasks that teachers' aides did many years ago, perhaps when you and I were in kindergarten. They have many, many more instructional responsibilities now and are primarily used for that purpose. We have paraprofessionals who are carrying out the role of teacher under the supervision of teachers all across the United States. A quote that I found when I was doing a little bit of research here, I want to share with you. Changing roles and responsibilities of paraprofessionals in educational settings make teachers' direction and supervision of paraprofessionals increasingly important. So when they're taking on instructional tasks and really doing the role of the teacher day in and day out, it is super important that teachers are on top of that and are paying attention to what's happening, and that we are sharing the instructional responsibilities, but also that the paraprofessionals feel like they're getting the support that they need. Paraprofessionals have many learning tasks in the classrooms that they serve. They are responsible for instructional tasks all the way from instruction of brand new skills to maintaining and generalizing learned skills. So not just academic tasks, but also social skills and functional skills and all of the things that our students are learning. They're often responsible for organizing the learning environment, making sure everything is in its place and ready to go. And that goes for preparing learning materials for the next day. One thing that teachers and paraprofessionals are both equally responsible for throughout the day is protecting instructional time. Being able to maintain all of those planned activities and making sure that every moment is captured for student learning. So, not just maintaining those skills that are learned and preparing, but also actually teaching academic, functional, and social skills throughout the day. Building independence and self-advocacy in our kids. So maybe thinking about those things that get in the way of independence, like over-prompting or standing too close and not backing away when our students are able to do things for themselves or to request things for themselves. Those are very challenging things for all of us to remember, and something that we really need to focus on as we interact and communicate with our paraprofessionals. Not only protecting that instructional time, but also creating more time for instruction throughout the day. So recognizing those teachable moments that occur throughout the day that may be able to build skills in our students. A nationwide survey was conducted of paraprofessionals. Here are some of the things that was learned from this survey. Paras report that low salary is not the biggest concern of their professional life, and that is something that obviously is an issue, but it was not reported as the main thing. Most paras reported that they're trained on the job without a lot of prior experience, so they walk in and begin their work and learn as they go. Their job satisfaction was most related to respect from their colleagues, being active members of a team, and that collaborative team culture within a school was really important to paraprofessionals. That speaks a lot to the role of the teacher and how we can facilitate that for our paraprofessionals. Some of the challenges that were reported on this survey included that age difference was sometimes something that caused friction between teachers and paraprofessionals or between paraprofessionals within a classroom. Sometimes that age difference can go both ways. Perhaps someone who's older may be less able or willing to take direction from someone who's younger, or someone who's younger may be intimidated to give direction to someone who's older and much more experienced. So teachers and paraprofessionals, as they work together, communication becomes really important for overcoming this challenge. A lack of work ethic or professionalism is something that was very challenging and reported on this survey. And lack of an understanding of the needs of students. So if a paraprofessional is working with a student and is not really sure where the root of the problem is and what they should be working on, it creates a huge challenge for them to complete their job. And also just in general, clashes between classroom staff make it difficult. I remember my first year teaching, my mentor teacher said that you spend more waking hours with your paraprofessional every day than you do with your husband. So it's very important to maintain that relationship. And I think being able to be intentional about that relationship will help to alleviate some of the clashes between classroom staff. So relationship strengths that were noted in this survey was mutual respect, clear and frequent communication, teamwork, there it is again, feeling a part of the team, and working together to solve problems were all things that were reported as strengths in that para-teacher relationship. The teacher leadership qualities that were noted that were important both to teachers and paraprofessionals were being open and understanding and responsive. And I want to stop just for a few seconds on responsive and talk about that. A lot of times when we encounter a problem, we may react to it. And that's not always the best plan. Being able to think about things ahead of time and respond to problems is much better than reacting to them in the moment. And that really does build team relationships, and it is a quality of leadership that really stands out. Being organized and prepared, confident. Also being flexible. If something comes up during the day and plans need to change, that's okay. Being student-focused. Focusing on student learning is always our main priority. Also noted in this survey was dedication and just being really caring and knowing that your job as a teacher and as a paraprofessional is important. All of these teacher leadership qualities were ones that stood out. So how do you do that? What do you do to establish those positive relationships with your paraprofessional in the classroom? So I've sort of organized this like an invitation in a who, what, where, and when situation. So first of all, who needs to establish norms? And the teacher is the leader in the classroom and needs to be the one who leads this discussion. But as you establish your norms, which are generally your expectations for communication and for how interaction is going to take place, every opinion is valued when the team sits down to do this. But the leadership role is on the teacher. So what are we going to establish? We're going to establish expectations. So what is it that everyone expects from one another? Perhaps a paraprofessional expects the teacher to do the lesson planning, to have that ready so that the paraprofessional can feel prepared when they go in the classroom. And perhaps the teacher expects the paraprofessional to communicate any issues that they had, either with the lesson or with behavior throughout the school day. So those are just two examples of expectations that might become part of your norms as a team. Also establishing a vision together. What is it that we want to accomplish overall this school year? Of course, student learning, but are there any specific things that as a team you want to be known for, you really want to stand out and to accomplish during the school year? And once you have your vision established, then you can establish some goals. You know, maybe by Christmas we want to accomplish this, or maybe by fall break we want to accomplish this. And it's very important to, as a team, determine what those goals are based on your vision and based on the resources that you have. Perhaps you need to make a list of things that you need to accomplish your goals and share that with your administrator. When do you do this? It's very important to do this before the school year begins. And I know time is very valuable, and we have a lot of meetings, a lot of scheduled things at the beginning of school years, but if you can carve out just a little bit of time to sit down, perhaps an hour, to sit down and really set these expectations and to listen to your paras and from their experience, that will go a long way to build trust as well. Then once that first meeting happens at the beginning of the year, then you can meet and review regularly the goals that you're working on, the lessons that you've done for that week. I would really recommend a weekly meeting to go over perhaps what happened during the week and to establish some activity plans and things like that for the following week, so that if some behavior was cropping up, you can talk about that and really figure out how you're going to address it as a team. All of these things are really important, but the why of it is probably what motivates us most of all. The main reason that we want to sit down and establish these rules, expectations, norms, whatever you want to call them for your team, is that team members will be valued and everyone will be on the same page. Trust will be built on your team, and it strengthens ultimately instruction, which is our goal. So as you're building your norms and really talking about that, there are some things that are the responsibility of the teacher that need to take place. And part of that is establishing systems and routines. We know that we're supposed to establish systems and routines for the betterment of our students in the classroom. And the main reason we want to do that is because it prevents confusion for everyone. We really want to increase instructional time, so having those systems and routines in place will protect instructional time. Time won't be wasted looking for things or figuring out where things go or where we put that the last time we had it. And even for the students, in the picture on the slide, you see a little sign that says, "Put homework here." As simple as that is, if you establish a routine for where students put their work when it's completed, there'll be a lot of instructional time protected because it will be ready. Even something as simple as having sharpened pencils on your desk ready to go that students can access so that they can do their work. Or having visual schedules written on the board or perhaps already established in another place in the classroom, so students and staff know what's coming next. That's very powerful. So, and also we need to structure our team interactions. So structure our meeting time. Perhaps the first 5 minutes of your meeting will be celebrations, and you'll talk about all the things that went well this week. And I would caution you to limit that to 5 minutes, because a lot of time we get really excited about the good things that are happening, and we use all of our time with that and don't have time to plan. I would provide time to think about the things that aren't going so well. So perhaps maybe the next 10 minutes might be the challenges that you encountered this week, whether that's academic or behavioral, or maybe a challenge with the schedule occurred and you need to brainstorm and figure out how to better serve our students and overcome that challenge. So your team meeting needs to consist of celebrations, of course, and also of planning for challenges that you encountered, but then also planning for things that are coming. So really, what activities are coming next week, what units are starting, perhaps what behavior plans are in place or coming into play that you need to discuss so that everyone will be on the same page. But during these meetings, you really need to provide time to think and to listen to one another and to really brainstorm and listen to the ideas that people have, not just the teacher or not just the para who tends to work with that student, but everyone come to the table and really think about what we can do to overcome these challenges. And sometimes at our team meetings for the classroom, it might be helpful to invite the speech therapist or a specialist related to one of the students or the issues. Always invite general education teachers if that is the setting where the problem or the challenge is occurring. Having this time to really think and listen to one another helps members to gain insight and really think about what our students need. It also focuses our attention back on instruction, which is the big why. That is why we're here and what it is that we're to do as an instructional team. So another important piece of really having an awesome team in your classroom is forging relationships, being intentional about caring for one another. So look for the positive and comment on it. If your paraprofessional has done an awesome job with one of your students or perhaps implemented a new idea that was really successful, say so. Make a big deal about it, and not just at the weekly meeting. Maybe even if you just lean over and say, I love that, great job. I really liked that activity. He learned so much, you could see it. Those kinds of things. Be specific about your praise and really make it genuine. Don't say good job with nothing behind it, but be specific. Another important piece that often gets overlooked is to really get to know one another. What are their strengths and interests and preferences? And have you shared those things with your paraprofessional about yourself? I know in my classroom one year we did a little bitty bulletin board that was sort of about the staff, and it was for our back to school night so that parents could meet the staff in the classroom. And we learned a lot about each other when we did that activity. We learned about each other's families and what some of our challenges are at home and what some of the awesome things that happen. One of my paraprofessionals goes hiking almost every weekend. I didn't even know that. So learning about the priorities and the goals of your staff will really go a long way to building those relationships. The most important thing, I think, is to have fun together as well, to really celebrate those things that are going well. Teaching in the classroom is great fun, and if we forget that, those relationships are going to break down. So I think it's important to really value one another and to have fun together. Establishing roles and responsibilities in the classroom when you're establishing those norms is very important. It is the teacher's job to really clearly define what's going to happen every week, but you really need to get to know your paraprofessionals to know what their strengths are so that you can figure out what skills and strengths and preferences they have to really match those with student needs. So I was a preschool teacher for many years, and I had some awesome paraprofessionals. One of my paraprofessionals loved arts and crafts. It was something that she did as a hobby at home. And so I would give her a list of instructional goals every week and say, you know, I'd really like to work on these goals with these students this week during our little art time in preschool. And could you come up with some activities that match those goals? She was so excited, and she did a much better job than I could have ever done because that was within her interest and skill set. So I was able to capitalize on her skills and her interests and her strengths for the betterment of the students. And that is what these roles and responsibilities are really all about. And then as you're going, you always need to model and provide direct training to of course to students, but to your paraprofessionals as well. So if you see a place where more reinforcement could be used, or maybe some specific praise would really go a long way, you can model that for your paraprofessional, and then later, after the instructional day is over, take a few minutes to go, you know, when you were working with little Johnny today, and I came over and I really praised him for what he was doing. That is something I'd really like to see you do. Maybe just a little bit more. And I know that you tell him that he's doing a great job, but if you would be specific about what he's doing, that would really be helpful. And if you have any questions, just let me know, or if you want me to model that some more, that would be great. And so being able to just provide feedback for all of the great things that are happening, but also for places where you can do a little bit differently to help students. So during those regular meetings, and we talked about some things that you can do, but here are some tips for teachers to really run a great regular meeting. Obviously, celebrate and discuss the successes. Identify the needs going forward and plan for the coming week. But here are the tips. Communicate clear, concise directions. A lot of times paraprofessionals don't always know exactly what it is that we want them to do by the lesson plan that we give them, but maybe they're afraid to ask for more specifics. They don't want to appear that they don't understand. So if you make a concerted effort to provide clear, concise directions, that will go a long way. But also make sure your paraprofessionals know that if they have any questions about what you've written, to please let you know, because everyone can be unclear at times, and kind of own that so that they don't feel like the problem is on their side, because if we haven't communicated something clearly, then that is something that we can improve. And also assign specific tasks with deadlines. So if you would like your paraprofessional to assess a student and you really need that to be done by Friday, then you can say, this is specifically what I need you to do, and if possible, could you get that done by Thursday, but no later than Friday, because that's when I need it. So they have some flexibility in when they can get that done. Also provide any other information needed to complete tasks and duties. So if there's a new unit coming up, or if there's a new routine that you're trying in the classroom, be sure to go over that ahead of time and maybe not spring that on them on the list of things that you want them to do for the day. Here are a few examples, and I know they're hard to explain on the screen, but I just wanted to put these two pictures to really show the difference in how some teachers communicate tasks and assignments to their paraprofessionals. The first typewritten page is a specific schedule for the day for what needs to be done with a particular student. And that's very effective for perhaps one-on-one paraprofessionals, or a paraprofessional that is maybe assigned to a student for a particular day or time period. You're able to specifically outline assignments and tasks. The second picture on the handwritten whiteboard is simply a routine schedule. So in this preschool classroom where I took this picture, the classroom paraprofessionals rotate their duties, and they have different students with them at different times on different days. And this is able to spell that out. It also outlines which students you're going to take data on which days, and also if there's any changes in the routine. So it may look like a bunch of scribble to someone who's not used to the system, but for that teacher and those paraprofessionals, this bulletin board is everything for the week. They look at it, they refer to it throughout the day, and the fact that it's posted in the classroom, if you forget, you can turn around and look and get all the information you need for different times of the day. So whatever your system, it's important to have a system to communicate what is expected for the week, not just for yourself, but for your paraprofessionals as well. So the most important thing that I can tell you as a teacher that you should do is to model and to be an example. So you want to demonstrate the skills that you wish your paraprofessionals to perform. We all have bad days, maybe even grumpy days. That makes it challenging for us to be the perfect model of how to be a teacher every day. But to just be intentional and think about modeling all of those great instructional strategies and systematic praise and all of the things that help our students to really excel and be their very best is what you should be modeling every day. And if it's something new, point it out to your paraprofessionals. You know, at 10 o'clock this morning, I'm going to be trying something new. So if you could peek over, and if you have any questions, let me know, and then we'll talk about it later. So maybe prime them a little bit for some new things that you're going to be doing so they can pay attention. The other thing is, whenever possible, show. Don't just tell them what to do. Don't just write it down on a piece of paper. Demonstrate exactly what it is, especially if it's something new. And this is really important as well for building trust and relationships. Be willing to do anything that you ask your paraprofessionals to do. I've been in classrooms and I've learned this the hard way, that it is really important to sort of rotate jobs so that no one feels like they're always the person who does that job they don't like. And that could be anything from helping students with lunch trays to being the person who collects homework. It doesn't really matter what the task is, but do a check-in every once in a while to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the task that they have and that you're rotating it enough around so that no one feels put upon at any time, or that they feel like they have to do all of the grunt work or the yucky work. Be sure to spread the wealth, including yourself. Another important feature is to provide feedback to your paraprofessionals and all of the staff that are working with your students, but also be willing to accept feedback from them. So mutual respect is definitely part of the team norms of any good working team. It really needs to be incorporated into your feedback as well. So have a scheduled time for feedback. Maybe that's at your regular meeting, or maybe that's as you sit down during the 5 minutes before the bus arrives. I know it's really challenging to find times to do that, but even if it's while you're waiting in line or waiting for the students to use the restroom or during a transition in between classrooms, provide feedback, positive and constructive, whenever you can. Also be able to provide modeling and training when needed. I've talked about that throughout the webcast today, but it's important to get that in, whether that's in the moment you see something that you need to model or it's something that you've planned for. Show appreciation to your paraprofessionals for the hard work that they're doing, and any time that somebody did something to support the good of the team, be sure to acknowledge that as well. And remember that when you feel respected, you are more motivated. And remember that survey at the beginning of our webcast. One of the most important features that paraprofessionals recognize is that they need to feel like they're part of a really good working team. And so when you show that you care and that you respect your paraprofessionals, motivation goes up and the cycle just keeps getting better and better. So, we've talked about how to help things go really well, but we all know that there are going to be times on any team when you face challenges. And here are some of the reasons you might have some troubleshooting to do. Absence of trust on the team. Maybe trust was broken and the person who was the offender has no idea what happened. So regular communication is important. And also, being able to have honest conversations is important. So if that communication has broken down in any way, that is going to make it really challenging. Maybe a lack of commitment to one another or just a perceived lack of commitment can provide challenges for teams. And also to sort of avoid being accountable for the tasks that are at hand is something that we sometimes encounter in the classroom on the part of paraprofessionals and the teacher. So really focus on all of these things and focus on results for your students. And if that focus breaks down, we're going to have some challenges. So here are some things that you can do to really overcome challenges that you encounter in the classroom. The first thing, we've talked about it all throughout the webcast, is communication. Common understanding is critical. And remember that just because you said it doesn't mean that it was understood. So always check, just like you do with your students, check for understanding and check to see if there's anything that needs clarifying when you're communicating in your classroom. Have that system for daily communication, however brief. So you might have a system for communicating that's written, but also have a system for face-to-face communication, even if it's just 1 minute here and 1 minute there. And be systematic about all of your communication with your paraprofessionals. Make sure that you are allowing time for them to communicate with you, not for just you to relay information. And always take the time to listen. I cannot undervalue the importance of administrative support in your school. So administrative support for your classroom teams is absolutely crucial. So be sure to communicate often with your administrator about how things are going in your classroom. If there's any troubleshooting that needs to happen, make sure to involve your administrator, whether that's just by stopping by for some quick advice or even inviting them to an occasional team meeting to really support the team and to maybe identify some places where you as the teacher need to improve your communication or your systems in your classroom. Putting yourself out there like that and inviting your administrator into the classroom goes a long way in building that trust with them as well. Administration supports teams by valuing all the voices. So just like you want to value all the voices in your classroom, your administrator is going to value your team's voice as well. So be sure, and administrators are busy, so schedule well in advance if you'd like them to come to a team meeting, maybe even a few weeks in advance, to let them know that you'd like them to come, and they'll do their best to attend, I'm sure. So, the last thing we're going to talk about is remembering the why we do what we do. Student learning. Everything comes back to advancing the skills of our students, whether that's academic, social, or functional skills, so that they can have the best life possible and go on to other kinds of education and the workplace. It is our job to make sure that our focus is always on student learning. So as you interact with your paraprofessionals, make sure that all of the focus always turns back to student learning when you're communicating about what happens in the classroom. It's another quote I want to share with you. Developing effective professional relationships among school staff is essential for providing students a high-quality educational experience. So those relationships in your classroom don't just make your job easier and more comfortable, it also promotes student learning. And one more. Education in the classroom is a lifelong commitment to strengthen and build on teachers' and paraprofessionals' effectiveness. The role of the teacher as the leader of ongoing and daily professional development is one that is critical to the field, as students with disabilities need and deserve instruction from highly qualified teachers and highly qualified paraprofessionals. And part of that highly qualified is that communication and that relationship that you maintain within the classroom. So as we close, I have a list of references for you of all of the articles and research that I used to develop this webcast. If you have any questions at all, you can email me on the web board, or if there's just something you'd like some resources for to maybe help you building those relationships in your classroom, I'd be glad to help. Thank you so much.